Hello again, and thank you for joining us. Our next presentation features a look using advanced analytics to optimize commercialization efforts. And I want to remind everyone, if you'd like to ask questions or engage with our speakers, please do so using the chat function on your screen. And now I'd like to introduce Janardhan Prasad, Chief Business Officer and Head of Life Sciences at Lore.io, and Mohammed Ladha, General Manager of U.S. Business Unit at Oncopeptides. Janardhan, please go ahead.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Janardhan, as Rebecca said. Today, I'll be talking about commercialization, and we'll be talking about various technologies that we use for advanced analytics to optimize the commercial launch. I'm Janardhan, Chief Business Officer and Head of Life Sciences Vertical at Lore.io. We work with emerging biopharma companies, helping them deploy advanced analytics, all set of modern technologies, so that as they travel the journey from molecule to market, their business teams are empowered with high quality data and they get real-time insights from that data. I also have with me Mohammed from Oncopeptides. Oncopeptides is one such customer who has picked Lore.io for their commercial analytics, and they are also an early adopter of all the modern technologies for the advanced analytics. Mohammed, please.
Yeah, thank you, Janardhan, and thanks for the opportunity to speak at this conference. My name is Mohammed Ladha. I am the General Manager of our U.S. business unit at Oncopeptides. A little introduction to Oncopeptides. We are a rapidly growing global biopharmaceutical company that has its roots in Sweden, and our focus is in developing therapies primarily in difficult to treat hematological diseases, and our first products will be focused on multiple myeloma. We anticipate that as a company, we'll launch our first commercial product in the US at the beginning of 2021. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Janardhan.
Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks for the introduction. Let's talk about commercialization. As we all know, commercialization is a long and a very complex journey. Even with access to all the data sources that most of the companies have these days, there's still a lot of unknowns. Be it in terms of channels and partners, like which distributor to pick, which partners to work with, which KOLs to engage, to like working with the right set of patients to identify what set of patients to focus on, what kind of patient cohorts to build, and do it in a way that we are serving an unmet need in the market, that even with a lot of drugs from the competitor, there are patients who don't have access to the treatment and therapies that the companies offer. It sounds simple with access to data, but it's not as simple when companies actually go through this journey. As per data by Deloitte, 36% of the companies miss their first year target after the launch. And this is true for big as well as small biopharma companies. Today, we are going to focus a lot about emerging biopharma companies. I know commercialization is complex for both big as well as small, but it's specifically challenging for these emerging biopharma companies. The reason being that these companies are launching drugs in like for a rare disease, for a market that is not served yet. Most of them are targeting maybe a life-threatening disease. So there is a lot of uncertainty around the commercial awareness in this space. On top of that, 70% of the companies who launch these specialty drugs, they are launching their drugs for the first time. So that means they are pre-revenue. They have limited access to the capital that forces them to make optimal decisions in terms of cost. And not just cost, but they have to pick solutions that could be deployed fast because they have a priority review coming up pretty soon. And they have to be agile while doing it. It's not just the access to capital that puts a constraint on them. It's also the limited availability of data, since these are rare diseases. The diagnosis data is limited, the awareness is limited, and there's an incomplete digital footprint that on top of which they can build their advanced analytics. In most of the companies, the patient population is significant, but we also work with companies where they are talking about 10,000 patients, maybe 20,000 patients in this entire country. And these are the patients who depend on this therapy for their life in most cases. So it needs a very highly targeted approach. It needs a very high-touch approach to deal with these patients and to work with the prescribers who are working with these patients. All of this is being done with a very small team with very limited resources by the emerging biopharma companies. Most of the companies that we work with, they have like one member, maybe two-member IT team. At times they don't have an IT initially when we start with them. And they have very small med affairs team, very like maybe 10 to 20 reps, but they still have to go ahead and launch a multi-million dollar, in certain cases, multi-billion dollar drug in the market. On top of that, there are a lot of unknowns since the data is limited, since the awareness is limited. There are a lot of unknowns, but these emerging biopharma companies who are really innovative, they still go ahead with their assumptions. They go ahead, they launch the market, and then if their assumptions work, they keep fine-tuning it. If they don't work, then they are able to quickly correct it and rapidly deploy the new strategy on the field. And this is possible. Like a lot of these emerging biopharma companies are able to do that, even with the small scale, even with the limited capital, they're able to do that because of the advancement in the technologies. They're able to build advanced analytics to mitigate some of these risks. Let me talk about some of them. Most of the companies, when they are building their strategy, which is highly data driven these days, they are getting more and more patient centric. And Mohammed will talk about it when he talks about how they are planning to engage with patients at oncopeptides. But as companies are focusing from patient perspective, not just from the physician perspective, they are going beyond the drug. They are not just thinking that, okay, we ship the drug and it's done. They are tracking each and every data point that they have. They are tracking each and every touch point that impacts the patient experience with the treatment, and they are improvising it constantly. There are initiatives like early access program, there are initiatives like copay card program, so that there's no patient that is left behind. And data plays a very important role in launching some of those initiatives. From initiatives about patient, the second thing is about awareness. As I said earlier, most of these diseases are like rare, they are new diseases. The awareness is also pretty limited, be it for the KOLs, be it for the physicians who are adopting these early therapies. The awareness is limited, and for that, the medical affairs team, the sales reps, the marketing team, they have to come up with a very unified messaging that is not conflicting, that is not misleading for the target audience. And this is all based on the unified data that companies put together to target the right set of audience. In terms of sales, things have changed drastically over the last couple of years. Gone are those days when the sales people will have access to the physician for an in-person meeting frequently. 2020 was a special year, but even before that, the access to the physician is getting restricted day by day. So companies are getting more innovative and they are coming up with the strategy to still engage with the physicians in a very high-touch approach, but make the meetings more productive by having the real-time data, talk more about outcomes, talk more about patient outcomes instead of just like the drugs, and engage with the physician community better. Another thing which is very important where companies are spending a lot of time is the patient access. It's not just market access, it's also the patient access. And the team here is really the voice of the patient. They are not just making sure that every drug is like getting shipped on time. They are making sure that the fulfillments are happening on time, the refills are happening on time. There is no shipment that is getting missed. If there is a miss, then it gets corrected easily. And they're using a lot of advanced technologies to make sure that patient is getting the best care at the right time and he is in the right hands in terms of the drug therapy. And they're all doing it with a small team because, as I said earlier, emerging biopharma companies have limited resources, but they work very well with each other. They hire specialists in that particular disease area, and they collaborate using data. They all refer to the single source of truth on top of this unified data, and they coordinate with each other, be it the field team or be it the management team. In fact, in some companies, and Mohammed will talk more about that, they're also empowering their area teams to take their own initiatives and still be in sync with the management team. So it's like creating a kind of an entrepreneur at an area level to build a culture of agility and innovation within the organization. And the reason these small companies are able to do that is because there's a lot of advanced analytics technology that is available. As per research by McKinsey, the companies who invest early in advanced analytics, they see higher returns, not just in terms of revenue and EBITDA and earnings, but we also see that it changes the culture of the company. When these companies launch, if they are if their strategy is on top of data, the kind of discussions, the kind of decisions they make, they are very, very long term. Before they make a decision, they go through multiple simulations before they finally execute a strategy. So it increases trust, it builds the culture of collaboration within this organization, and this EBITDA and drug success and commercial success is just a good outcome of it. The reason they are able to do that is because they are able to iterate very fast. Like, there are a lot of disparate sources. There are most of the companies that we work with, they deal with like 10 to 20 different diverse sources, be it specialty distributor, be it the claims data set, data is coming from CRM, data is coming from Hub, so many sources. This is the real world, complex, highly complex data, and we start plotting like data points from that. Let's take an example of patient journey, how we did it at oncopeptides. It was not just a one-time activity that was done once and it was done. With oncopeptides, we did the patient journey over a period of 2 months, and we did 10 iterations. Almost every week, we were doing an iteration, we were making assumptions, we were going through the data, we were training our AI, we were training our data quality systems, and we were giving it to the field for the feedback. And once we get that feedback, we again go back to the drawing board, we change our assumptions, we change our hypothesis, and then we redo our patient journey. And now, after 10 such iterations or 10 such simulations, the kind of patient journey that we have is highly effective. I would say it's closer to what reality would be, and that helps us come up with a strategy that is a higher chance of success. And Mohammed will talk about that when he will talk about his patient access program. And the reason companies like oncopeptides are able to do that is because there is technology available. In last 5 to 10 years, there have been major advances in technologies, be it in terms of cloud availability that makes it really low cost and highly agile infrastructure, which is mostly serverless. It's all virtual so that people don't have to deploy a lot of resources to manage it. It's all virtual, that makes it real time. Like no more data pipelines are required, no more data engineering is required. Even a small company with a limited resources can get access to the best of products in the market, and they can get started very early. Not just early, they don't have to put a lot of upfront commitment, upfront cost initially. This entire technology leads to the faster turnaround of data. Most of the integrations are happening in near real time. Like, for example, at oncopeptides, we were able to integrate most of the sources within a day or two. So it was not that like we get a data and we don't have to wait for 2 weeks or 3 weeks to integrate a data vendor. It was happening in real time. And it's not just the integration, but also all the business rules, all the transformations, all the data quality rules. There are all pre-built automation that's going in place. It's all enabled by AI that makes it super fast. And with that, the best advantage for the commercial team is that they are getting access to the data almost on a daily basis. They are getting insights in real time that helps them make decision more proactive way instead of reactive. Earlier, what used to happen was they used to get reports every Monday or maybe end of the month, and it was too late to react to that. Now, using AI, most of the things are getting alerted in almost near real time. For example, like based on the patient behavior, based on the prescriber patterns, at times we generate alerts that helps the field force take corrective action even before the data starts showing up on the Tableau. Using AI, we do a lot of predictive modeling and a lot of data quality things where AI is not just generating alerts, at times it's also fixing the data quality issues. So a lot of things is getting automated, and it brings a lot of speed to the business team. And with that, now the bigger benefit I would say is for the business analysts, for the business teams who are not just looking at the canned report, they are not just looking at the dashboard, they're doing a lot of ad hoc analysis. And that ad hoc analysis helps them make corrective action very rapidly. If something is working in one area, they are able to quickly deploy it in other areas. If something is not working or if something has changed, they are able to do the course correction immediately. So that brings a lot of agility to the company, and that makes them very, very nimble, very, very agile, and move fast. The end outcome of this is that it increases the ownership, not just at an individual level, but at a team level, at a company level. And that creates a culture of trust within the organization because it's all coming from data which is easily accessible for almost everyone in the organization. Lower IO is one such company, and there are a lot of other technologies available that we have bundled together very specifically for emerging biopharma companies. So what we have done is we have trained our AI models, we have used these cloud technologies, we have used these serverless technologies for these emerging biopharma companies who are early in their commercial journey, and we trying to make it easy for them to go through this journey. It's completely cloud based, it's completely packaged, so companies could pick from like med affairs to clinical operations to commercial to market access. They can start very early at a very low upfront cost. Just like a SaaS, it's a pay as you go model. Most of the companies start with limited users, like Oncopeptide started with just 3 users. And now, like as the company grows, as they get closer to the launch, as the business does better, we keep expanding the footprint with the company and we keep getting more successful with the customer. Oncopeptides, we have been working with them for almost a year now. We engaged with them early last year and we have deployed all these technology at Oncopeptides, which is, I would say, an early adopter of all these technologies. And Mohammed will talk about that. Over to you, Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you, Janardhan. That was a great overview. So you have heard some of the fundamentals to what Lore IO brings to the table and what some of the key requirements are if you want to launch a product today in sometimes a highly complex, sometimes a highly competitive market. And that happens to be one in which we'll be launching in multiple myeloma. It's great that you have a number of options for these patients today, but also what's important is that we need to be a very agile, very nimble organization that can make decisions very quickly, but make sure that we have data that's reliable, it's simple, it's something that is digestible, and something that is being developed and delivered on real time basis, and we don't have to be reactive in number of these cases, and most cases try to be very proactive in how we execute. So, what are some of those data sources? This won't surprise you. There is a utility of what I would call as a secondary data sources to third party like IQVIA and PRA that provide you all kinds of data from at the provider level, at the account level, in terms of what the claims data is. We combine that data with what we collect through our CRM and also understand how the patients have engaged with our hub services. And on top of that, we want to make sure that we have our product data that primarily will come through the our specialty distributors. No surprises here in terms of the household names from AmerisourceBergen to McKesson to Cardinal. So as Janardan highlighted earlier, this seems to be data sets that tend to live in silos, and you sometimes come through to you not even through any operating systems, but mostly in an Excel format. And you look at this data in a very static manner. There are pros and cons to that approach, but one of the key things we were looking at is that as we are launching into a very, very highly dynamic, complex marketplace, how do we take all this, our own data and what's available to us to our secondary data sources and bring it together that provides us with a very quick deployment of what this means, be able to adjust our tactics and strategies to meet what the market needs are. But also very importantly is what the patient needs are and how do we link it together with what the payers are doing, what the providers are doing, so we can provide the best service for our patients as well. Now, all this data gets collated into what LoRa.io is doing for us, and then it gets deployed appropriately to the individual teams, be it on our medical affairs side, to our sales and sales operations teams, and then clearly from our market access and our patient services team as well. And this is, in my experience, having been in this industry for a couple of decades, this is something that's very new, and we planned it that way. And this is something that was always my dream, that if I'm at one of these organizations, we can have access to something. But the other part of this was also, who is the provider? There are a number of providers out there, and as we did our diligence, definitely Laura IO stood out, and have really proven so far to deliver on what our expectations and what our business objectives are. But let's talk about where it really makes a difference, and that is with our end customer, and that is the patients, right? So our ultimate goal at Oncopeptides is to ensure that we put the patients first, and we eliminate any barriers that may be coming their way from a financial perspective, to get the therapy. So what we are trying to establish up front is to be less reactive in how we can support continuously the patients with their patient journey in terms of treatment, and be more proactive in understanding some of the market behaviors, some of the patterns we may be seeing in the marketplace, but even with our products, with the payers, with the providers, and try to continuously optimize those conditions, so as a patient can have a very good experience with the product. Now, clinically, of course, they're being catered through their oncologists and hematologists. But from other end, in terms of any financial burden, any reimbursement barriers, we can address them in a very dynamic manner, understand what some of those are, and be able to address those through key levers we put in place with all our partners, and make sure that any patients coming to our therapies don't have to deal with all the barriers that we've already understood, and be able to address them through this very comprehensive but dynamic data set that we have received. So that helps us really be very, very dynamic with our data set, and we're already seeing some early fruits from this kind of approach, even before we have commercialized, where we have identified some of these barriers, and we are addressing them accordingly, and make sure that our launch will be even more optimized and be successful. So what does this all mean at the end of the day, right? So we talked about the teams, we talked about the patients. Now let's bring it all full circle. And what this means is, we have millions and millions of data points that are available to us. In a If this were all static, and what Janardhan had talked about, what Laura here does is, we're bringing it all together, right? But what this is also allowing us to do is, through artificial intelligence and machine learning, we're able to understand this data better, and trying to learn from it, and understand what some of the key patterns are, that we are able to then be a better partner with our HCPs or providers, but also more importantly with our patients, and also provide some of the key data sets to our payers, so they understand how this product is utilized, and they are able to kind of plan from their angle as well. So we believe that all this is giving us a competitive edge in the marketplace. But at the end of the day, this is all about patients, and making sure that we create the best experience for our ultimate customers, which happen to be the patients. So with that, I really want to thank you for your time, and hopefully you have found this presentation and what we shared with you useful. And I'll turn it back to Janardhan.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thanks everyone for dialing in for this session. Have a great day, everyone. And if you have any more questions for me at Loreio, or for Mohammed at Oncopeptides, please reach me out at janardhan@loreio.com, or you can visit our websites for more details. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.